Dawn breaks over the Strait of Gibraltar, and the water is already full of people. Not dozens, not hundreds, tens of thousands, swimming, climbing, wading toward a 9-square-kilometer strip of Spanish territory in North Africa. By the time the sun is up, Ceuta's population will have grown by almost half in a single morning. Spanish soldiers, badly outnumbered, try to hold a line that was never built for this. Within 72 hours, more than 80 people will be dead. The headlines will call it an invasion, but an invasion implies someone attacking. This was something stranger, a border that didn't fall. It was let go. And the question that matters isn't how this happened. It's who let it happen and why now. This didn't start on a beach in July. It started in a hospital room 5 years earlier. In May 2021, roughly 10,000 people crossed into Ceuta in under 48 hours after Moroccan border guards simply stepped aside. The trigger was diplomatic. Spain had let a Western Sahara independence leader receive hospital treatment without warning Rabat. Rabat has never officially admitted responsibility, but Spanish officials at the time were blunt. This was pressure applied through people. Madrid seemed to take the lesson personally. In 2022, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez broke decades of Spanish neutrality and endorsed Morocco's plan for Western Sahara, a reversal that angered his own coalition, but tied Madrid's southern border even more tightly to Rabat's goodwill. Behind the scenes, the warning signs kept surfacing. Spanish officials alleged they were targeted with Pegasus spyware, traced back to Morocco. Spain's own intelligence service reportedly flagged the risk of another surge, and was ignored. Then, in January 2026, Sánchez launched a mass regularization program for undocumented migrants already in Spain. More than 1 million people applied, a quarter more than the government expected. It would later become the exact argument 22 EU governments used to blame Spain itself for what was coming. And 3,000 kilometers away in Washington, the alignment was shifting too. Days before the crisis, Donald Trump reaffirmed U.S. recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara. A U.S. House committee had already floated language calling Ceuta and Melilla, Spanish for 5 centuries, Moroccan territory. Morocco, meanwhile, had spent years courting Washington, recognizing Israel, opening its ports to American arms shipments, even naming a highway after the president. It's a strategic bet. Back the rising power in Rabat, sideline the friction with Madrid. Spain, by contrast, had drifted from Washington, clashing over Gaza, over NATO spending, over Palestine. Every one of these pressures pointed at the same door: Western Sahara, Pegasus, ignored warnings, a migration policy already under fire, and a superpower quietly picking sides. All that was missing was a trigger. And on a Wednesday in July, they got one. Officially, this is what happened. A rumor. A false claim spreading on Moroccan social media, insisting Spain's Supreme Court had just ruled that migrants who reached Ceuta could no longer be sent back. It wasn't true. But by Wednesday, it didn't need to be. Smuggling networks picked it up, pushed it further, and told anyone who would listen, "This is the moment. Go now." That's the story Madrid and Rabat both prefer. It's clean. Nobody's fault, really. Just bad information moving faster than the truth. But the footage doesn't quite match the story. Witnesses described Moroccan police officers at the border pointing people toward the crossing point instead of stopping them. Go that way. One migrant recalled being told, not once, but repeated by multiple officers along the route. Spain's civil guard says it went further. Using camera surveillance at the border, analysts identified individuals moving through the crowd who weren't migrants at all. Men in civilian clothes, guiding groups, gathering information, coordinating movement. Spanish intelligence believes they were Moroccan agents. And then there's the timing. Hours before the surge began, King Mohammed VI stood before the country and marked 27 years on the throne, with a speech built entirely around stability and progress. Hours later, Thousands of his citizens were swimming toward Spain. None of this proves coordination, but none of it looks like an accident either. By the numbers alone, this stopped being a border incident and became something else. 60 to 70,000 people in a territory of 84,000. For 1 week, more than half of Ceuta's population arrived from somewhere else. Somewhere between 57 and 88 people didn't survive the crossing. The two governments can't even agree on how many died. Most of those crossing were young men, but the footage also showed families, mothers carrying children through the water, teenagers navigating rocks slick with algae, in a crossing that has drowned people before and would drown people again. This wasn't a controlled test of a border's weak point. It was tens of thousands of individual decisions. Spain scrambled to respond. Military units deployed to a fence line that had never been designed to hold a crowd this size. Soldiers, some barely out of training, tried to separate arriving families from processing lines that didn't exist yet. Within days, most had been sent back across the border, though how many and to where would become its own argument. But if this really was allowed to happen, the next question is obvious. Who wanted it to? If someone did engineer this, the obvious next question is, who had the motive? One theory blames Morocco's own power struggle, that a top royal advisor, Fouad Ali El Himma, used the crisis to embarrass the sitting prime minister ahead of elections. Unconfirmed, but not unprecedented. Another points to Washington, Trump's fresh recognition of Moroccan claims over Western Sahara, timed just days before the crisis, while Sanchez's Spain has spent the year clashing with the White House over Gaza and NATO. And then Spain's own transport minister, reacting to an Israeli government post about the crisis, said on the record, "It's all starting to become quite clear." He didn't explain. He didn't have to. 3 theories, 3 different culprits, and then there's a fourth, stranger, bigger, and increasingly hard to dismiss. A third theory is stranger and far more speculative, but it's gaining traction among some European analysts. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively choked off since the war with Iran and pressure building on the Red Sea and Suez, the Strait of Gibraltar has quietly become one of the most valuable stretches of water on Earth, the last reliably open route into the Mediterranean. Spain controls it. Under this theory, a Morocco that controls Ceuta, or at least destabilizes Spain's hold on it, becomes a Washington-aligned alternative gateway. There's no official document that confirms this. It's a framework, not a fact. But it's the kind of framework that explains why a migration crisis suddenly matters. None of these theories cancel each other out. Morocco's domestic politics, Washington's strategic bet, a shipping lane worth protecting, and a minister's pointed remark, they can all be true. What they share is a single implication. 50,000 people didn't cross a border because of a rumor. They crossed because someone decided it served their interests to let them. Even the basic facts of this story don't agree with each other. Some reports say 50,000 people crossed, others say more than 70,000. Spain's official death toll moved from 57 to 72 to 88, depending on the day you checked. Morocco has published its own lower count. For an event this large, on territory this small, that kind of disagreement isn't a rounding error. It's a sign that nobody on either side of the border actually had control of what was happening. And the confusion doesn't stop at the beginning. It's still happening right now over one basic question. Where are these people? Officially, Spain and the European Commission say the answer is simple. The overwhelming majority already returned to Morocco, largely because Ceuta had no food, no shelter, nowhere to put them. Local officials in Ceuta tell a different story, of a city still overwhelmed days later, including more than 1,100 unaccompanied minors who, under Spanish law, cannot simply be sent back. An unknown number of adults are still there too. And a third claim, that people have quietly reached mainland Spain, is the one nobody will confirm. The European Commission has stated flatly, on the record, that no irregular migrant has moved onto the European mainland. And yet Ceuta's own government is actively lobbying to transfer those 1,100 miners to the mainland under a law passed just last year. And more than 400 miners from earlier arrivals have already made that exact trip. Returned. Still here. Quietly moved on. All three are being said, out loud, by officials, at the same time. Nobody, not Madrid, not Brussels, not Ceuta itself, actually knows which one is true for how many people. What's not in dispute is how badly this fractured Europe's response. Brussels offered to deploy its border agency, Frontex. Spain said no. Italy responded by reimposing emergency Schengen checks. 22 EU governments signed a joint letter blaming Spain's own migration policy for the crisis. Sanchez wrote back accusing his allies of abandoning him. And as of the first week of August, Spanish authorities are reportedly bracing for a second wave. Whatever this was, it isn't over. It's paused. Strip away the theories, and one thing is certain. This was not a border overwhelmed by chaos. It was a border used deliberately by someone as a pressure valve. Whether that someone sits in the Moroccan royal court, in Washington, or simply in a government that has learned migration, is the cheapest weapon it owns. The real failure was never Ceuta's fence. It's that Spain's entire southern border depends on the goodwill of a neighbor with every incentive to take that goodwill away. The casualty count is still disputed. Nobody agrees on where the people who crossed actually are. The European Union is more fractured over this than it's admitted publicly. August 15th will tell us whether anyone actually learned anything from this. My guess, we're about to find out the answer is no.
Everyone plays the first move. Subscribe to Second Move.